slides is in Norwegian, but he will speak in English. So we can have this version of in practice like that. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So, the Norwegian health system will collapse in 20 years if we don't innovate radically. There is no way to improve ourselves out of the graphs we're looking at. The good news is that there are concrete and practical ways to innovate. It's in its most difficult and simple form about focusing everything you do around the user, be they customers, patients, relatives, or staff. So how can that be so difficult? It's about where the health system really believes that value lies. Over the past decades, we have industrialized our health services to make them more productive and more efficient. This is a good thing. But the dark side of that is that somehow the people have gotten lost as a resource. The health services, they tend to focus on productivity, as a factory does. But what they produce isn't cars. It's something different. In a way, we've created a system that looks at itself as something that produces good health onto citizens. The big challenge is that the health services need to redefine how they think about value. And they have to think about value as something which is co-produced between the system, between patients, relatives, and staff. As citizens in the future, we need to take greater responsibility for our own health. And we need a system that allows us to do so. That opens up for us to participate in creating better health. So, how do we do that? It's very easy to think that it is technology that will make more efficient systems. If we build more IT, more infrastructure into everything, it will be so much more efficient than it is today. That's wrong. People will make more efficient systems. The people that work in the health services will make more efficient systems. Patients can make more efficient systems. Relatives can make more efficient systems. Technology is only something that should be built to make people more efficient, not to make the system more efficient. But looking at how we do things in our country today, it seems that we spend billions on technology to make the system more efficient. It's not going to go too well. That's my prediction. Let me give you an example of what practical, concrete ways of looking at people can do in innovation. What you see here is a patient pathway. Patient pathways are a concept where you kind of make flow diagrams to describe a patient's path through a particular treatment. It kind of emerged in the States in the 80s, and it's now become quite popular as a way to industrialize the health services. In some of our work with hospitals in Norway, we saw how enormous effort was put into making these patient pathways. And this is an example that I found. It is a patient pathway for dealing with children with hyperactivity, ADHD, ADHD, from a hospital in Norway. Now, as a designer, I could look at that 50-page document in PowerPoint very quickly and tell that this patient pathway would never be used by anyone. It's maybe 6 months worth of work, lots of knowledge being created, research assembled, residing in the people's heads that built this together. But this innovation would have been, or it will be, completely impossible to spread in the system. So we had an idea. We thought, maybe it would be possible to build a way, a simple way, to visualize patient pathways so they would spread better in the system. And we got some innovation money to do a pre-project. So we talked to about 15 different types of users. We talked to patients, relatives, local doctors, hospital doctors, specialists, administrators, nurses, basically all across the health service to understand their needs. But what we were trying to understand wasn't what all the needs were to a system that would make patient pathways easily consumable. We tried to find the one common thing that everybody needed. We wanted to remove all the special needs, and we thought if every group found one thing they need, then they would all use it. And if they all use it, they will start sharing knowledge. So here's the concept. We are still with ADHD, and it's built on a real one. So in simple terms, you see the steps in the treatway, in the pathway, the different actors, PP-tjenesten, school, and what they do next to each other, and how they need to collaborate, and so on. We also saw that it would be a great opportunity to share. So these pathways are very similar across the country. If someone invested a lot in making one, why not share it with another place so they can do local adjustments and use it and save all that investment that's gone into creating the knowledge. So here's my question to you. In looking at the patient pathway like this, what is the one thing you believe every user would need? Patients, relatives, doctors, specialists, administrators. Wild guesses. It's in here. Doesn't have to be right. Information about diagnosis. Yeah. Anyone else? Progress, status.
Contact persons.
There you go. The one thing everyone needs from this kind of system is the phone number to the next person in the line. Inside the big hospital, they don't know each other's phone numbers. In a small council, I talked to 3 nurses in Gudbrandsdalen. They said, well, at the old people's home, when we have a patient which also has a mental health problem, we just don't know who in our council to talk. This is a council of 15,000 people. So we knew if we put the phone number of the person responsible for every task into the system, it will drive use. Use will drive knowledge sharing, and it will help the system gain enough critical mass to be a real useful tool. These are the simple things we can do if we look at what we want to do from a people perspective rather than a technology perspective. We are now on our way to take this into a pilot phase with some hospitals in Norway, and we're very excited to see if it works in practice. So this is the point again. if we open this up, rather than it being a PowerPoint located on a server in the hospital, inaccessible, make it available to patients, and to everyone to see what's supposed to go on here, they will be more empowered to participate in the treatment and make sure it goes right. My claim is that if we're going to build a better health system, there is one unexploited resource that we have completely ignored, and it's the active, productive resource of the users. In our health services, this is the oil in the ground. It's there to be pumped up, and we haven't really touched it. Let me give you another example of how speaking to people can help new solutions go on that are simple. We worked with Oslo University Hospital around patient information. How can we enable the hospital to give them better information? We worked with the cancer ward and the children's ward. And the nurses told us, we tell them everything they need to know about the treatment. But somehow, they just don't get it. They can't remember it all, but we give them everything. So we asked the patients, and they told us, well, that's not a difficult question. The reason is, we're thinking about something else. I have a cancer diagnosis. Will I be able to keep my house? Can I pay my loan? Our daughter is very ill. Can my marriage survive this situation? There are other thoughts in people's heads that took up so much mind space, the space to understand the treatment wasn't big enough. So the key insight from that was that they had all these questions. And where the hospital was very keen on providing information about the treatment, in this case, we actually shouldn't simplify it. We need to give patients more information. Good information about how to live your life in a difficult situation. And, as our cancer patient said, NAV, the social services, was possibly the most deadly thing about getting a cancer diagnosis. How to help people actually navigate a relatively complex social system. So this was one of about 15 key insights that helped us drive that project. But the real success of that insight came somewhere else, because when Helsedirektoratet, the Norwegian Directorate of Health, decided to make a big push to make a new portal, which is the government portal for health, which they intend to become a self-service portal over the years. They asked us into the concept development, and we brought also some of our previous insights into the work. And there it is today. The top menu on that portal is a reflection of that insight. It's how to live your life, it's about your treatments, and it's about navigating the system. So, very simple insights that mean a lot for normal people. And interesting things, it makes the system more efficient, because people stop asking stupid questions. They stop bothering people who should be busy doing more important things. Most importantly, it makes people less worried, less anxious, because confident patients make much more efficient patients. It's the people that will make more efficient systems. So where do we start? There are many places to start. We could start like our government did, move money around. Let's move it from hospitals to councils. That will change everything. Or we can add technology. Or if you don't know what to do, you can hire some more consultants to help you reorganize. I think from the work we've done, we've seen that the enormous potential for innovation is actually doing what's bleedingly obvious to everyone. Pick the low-hanging fruit. Work on the things that everyone knows are problematic and fix them. And it might look like small and banal things, but when you do many of them, the system effect is huge. I'll give you another example. This is some work we did last year, and it was around what it's like to start school. We worked with Ahus, one of the biggest hospitals in the country. We worked with RBUP, or BUP, so the mental health for children and youth kind of organization, and we worked with the local council of Lillestrøm. What we know is that children that have some problems that aren't well taken care of in the first 2 years of school are enormously costly to rescue later. And we know the transition into school, done well, provides enormous value for those children, for those families, and for the economy. So this is where we started. We sat down with the experts and we said we want to define a project that has 3 criteria. We need to find some local enthusiasts to work with, some people that really care. We need to find a problem that everyone have observed and recognized, and that is obvious to everyone. And we need to find a group of people that's big enough so that it's worth doing something about it. And the result was that we did a project that really looked at how do we make a better transition from kindergarten to school for children that might have some kind of hyperactivity. It's something everyone recognized. This is a very problematic area because by law you're not allowed to diagnose kids too early. You shouldn't. There are also other problems there, and we see there's a tendency now in Norway to overdiagnose and overmedicate these children. So the approach was to create a service that made the transition better for all kids and their parents. That would especially help those that might have a problem, and do it in a way that will avoid diagnosing too many of them, but that we really take care of those that need help. That was the idea. So again, we spent time with families to observe what was important to them. But there are other users. It's the experts, meaning those people that work with these kids every day. The school, the kindergarten, and the specialists. They have an incredible wealth of knowledge about what the real and true needs are. And then we gathered everyone involved to define a pilot that we could run together. Because we knew that the best form of innovation would be by piloting it, so we could generate observable behavior that we could learn from and build on, rather than theorize. So what we put together was a very simple innovation. It was a new process from kindergarten to school. And this is extremely simple. It's basically about getting the right people to meet in the right place at the right time. There would be a meeting in the kindergarten on the children's home ground with the kids. There would be one in school, on the new home ground, with the right people. And there's some homework in between. So this is our pilot plan, which was our way to learn. This is what it looked like. So this process manifested itself to parents as a piece of information and guidance. That's basically the steps but it's also the place to make notes and to understand what's in the process. This is the plan. It's handwritten and signed by everyone that's part of the process. And it focuses on the person. This is Matthias. He doesn't have a number, he doesn't even have a last name. It's a person. And we made homework, but it wasn't about diagnosing these kids. It's about who is he? What's his strong sides? What are his weak sides? Well, he may not be good at sitting still, but he's a very good runner. It's about really understanding the capacity and the capability of these kids and what they struggle with, not about putting them into a medical box. We worked with researchers, so we knew that, what's mestring in English? Being good at stuff, or gaining proof that you can do things well, is what it's all about. Yeah, mastery. Yeah, so it's mastery. So we put in a lot of stuff where people could actually discuss and talk about what is mastery to this young person. And then, of course, we had the enthusiast. And we worked with some incredible people, so engaged in actually trying this out and working with the families to find out what would work for them, working with their colleagues around how they could do things in practical ways. There's a link there that will enable you to see more about how we ran that pilot. And we're fortunate also to have some researchers on the team that helped us observe and really analyze what was going on, so we could capture knowledge that we could apply in a broader way. So this is a picture from, I think, November last year with my colleague Anders, where we invited everyone that was involved in the pilot, the families, the professionals, to discuss what we had learned, to see if we were onto something. And the response was amazing. The amount of work that parents had put in was incredible. They were so engaged. And we got the same from the school, from the kindergarten and everything. The only thing that kind of disappointed us was that we set up a research plan to be able to put together some really strong research in order for us to be able to scale. But the results were so good, all they actually just said, we'll scale. We don't really need the research. And here are some of the responses we got from the people that were involved. It was good to have a name and a face on the people that we were dealing with. As a parent, I got really good guidance and advice on how to handle the situation, which was great for me. Now, this is very good feedback and made us incredibly happy, and it was enough for the people who fund this to say, you know, we can scale. But in the beginning of the talk, I claimed that we need to innovate in radical ways. This seems extremely obvious to us all. This is not rocket science. But my claim is, if we do enough of this, there will be radical change in the system. So it's a question about how we approach radical innovation. And what I'd like to say is, if we're going to start somewhere, we need to deal with the obvious. We need to deal with things that we've all seen, and that all the people we talk to will say, that sounds like a good place to start. And the list is long of low-hanging fruit in the health system. Give patients better information. Everyone who's been in touch with the Norwegian health system knows it will make their life better. The interesting thing is that it will also make the system extremely extremely more efficient because well-educated patients demand less from staff and they take more responsibility for their own treatment. Train people to listen actively to the people they meet, whether they be patients or others. It's a cultural thing, but it's not a difficult thing. I mean, I've been observing enough Norwegian hospitals to know there's an incredible amount of personal engagements from the staff that meet patients every day. But they're not really trained in how to meet them. And what research tells us is that when patients feel that they're being seen, they behave much better. It's those simple things about looking into people's eyes. And the reason for it isn't really that they want the hospital to feel like a happy place, but they think when staff don't look them in the eyes and behave well with them, they think they're hiding bad news, which makes them anxious, which makes them more demanding patients. It's not about selling more product, it's about communicating well. Something that would be obvious in the private sector, like make sure someone picks up the phone and passes it on to the right person. I wish I had the numbers of hours wasted in Norwegian health for phones not getting to the right person at the right time. It's a small investment to put up a good phone reception. But there's a long way to go. Help me come to my appointment at the right time. Apparently, at the biggest hospital in Norway, Oslo-based hospitals, if all the patients came to their appointments, there would be no waiting time. And for you foreigners, it's one of the big election topics this year. The waiting list to get into hospitals are too long. Help people make their appointment. The reception. A friendly, professional reception, whether it be in a local council or in a hospital, will save an enormous amounts of time and money in the system. And it's not difficult to do. The only problem is that it's not valued because it's looked at as a cost. But what it really is cost saving. So if the investment was put there, the system efficiencies would be enormous, I believe. And the private sector knows this. So it's not like you have to invent anything new. Just take best practice and do it. Make waiting easier. I mean, sometimes we have to wait. There's no way around it. But what we know from behavioral psychology is that waiting is much easier if you know why you're waiting and how long you're going to wait. Just tell people why and how, and they won't bother you with phones, with getting there, asking all the questions that they shouldn't be asking. When we worked with the cancer patients, my colleague Anders and I interviewed a 78-year-old woman with a cancer diagnosis. Just an incredible person, said, you know, had a good life. This might be it, but it's okay. But her worst experience was that she went to her general practitioner. He said, you may have cancer. You need to go to the hospital and take some tests. So she did, but she didn't know what the test was and when she would get an answer. It was the worst 3 weeks of her life. When she got the answer, yes, she had cancer, she felt, now I know what I need to deal with. And then you can go into more complex things. So the medical journal, my health data. So we have brain surgeons on bikes between hospitals in Oslo to get the data over to the right person. Personally, I think it's my data. It's It's my health, it's my body. Why does the government have a monopoly on that file? It's wrong, ethically, and from a productivity perspective, it is meaningless. I would be a very good person to make sure the right data got to the right place, because I'm pretty invested in it getting there. So the list is long of low-hanging fruit, where there's a huge potential for simple innovation, things we can do quickly, things that as a mass effect will have radical effect on the system. The challenge, I think, for us all is the fundamental one. We need to turn the eyes of the system away from itself and onto the people that will make it more efficient. So that's it for me. Thank you. If you're interested in more of the method stuff, we just published a book in America called Service Design, which is available online. Thank you.
Thank you, Lavrans. Still the medal. Do you want to comment something about this?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I listen to a lot of healthcare presentations in a lot of countries, and this is probably the best I've heard in the last 3 years. So thank you. You said more in the first minute that was on point than I generally hear about the first half. You know, about systems that cannot be fixed by incremental improvement. 2 questions for you. One is, we've been wrestling with a lot of the same issues around having family support and caregiver support. Oh, I'm sorry. We've been wrestling with the same issue of thinking about ways to move from, and by the way, I think you do have a radical solution. Yeah, the radical solution is you're moving from a system in which the caregiver is at the center to one in which the caregiver does less direct treatment and more management of family, friends, and a network of people that support you in your daily life. If you play that out in a strong, organized way, that's pretty revolutionary. I think that, the 2 questions I had were, one, you talked a lot about inpatient, and I agree with that. Have you done any work or thought about how to work with families in the home and patients in the home for that time that they're out of the hospital? And then the second question is, we've wrestled with the notion of how much low-hanging fruit to go after before you have to sort of take a step back and say, it's time to do a grander design. And what's your sense of the dynamics here? You know, is it a year to build credibility and then take on something larger? Is it many years of low-hanging fruit? And how does it play out in the
I don't know. Let's get back to that. I think on the first one, I really agree. It's this coordination. And we've done some more interesting work in the US around chronic diseases. And it was really centered about drugs, that for people who may have to live with disease for 10 to 20 years, and progressively will get worse and worse. And it's interesting in a different health system, because what the pharmaceuticals knew was that it's actually not the pill that's going to make the difference, it's the services around the pill that's going to make it the one that gives the best patient outcome. And there's some roles that came up very, very, very quickly, in that it looked like families actually needed a care coordinator. Someone external that was a professional at navigating different roles around the treatment that they could have access to. And we really worked on, all right, so what kind of person is that? And we ended up kind of with 2 options. It would probably be nurses, because they had seen the culture of the person, or it would be someone who had been in a family that have the same conditions. So those are probably the people to hire for that kind of a role. So that's an interesting one, and I think to be the care coordinator inside your own family, I think it's a pretty tough job.
But a job that people play informally without training and very little support. So can you leverage it by giving them the support to provide the care?
Yeah, completely agree. Then the second question, I kind of come from the other side than you. We've been working on these very big kind of system ideas, and finally ended up, just fix the queue. So how long do you do that? I don't know. The patient pathway one is an interesting case in point because it's a very simple thing. It's a web tool that visualizes something, and it could potentially be connected to quality systems and so on inside the hospital. It took us about 3 years to do the concept. We could have done it in 3 months, but we had so many other things to do, so we kind of did it in 3 years. And it turned out it was about the time the health services needed to get to understand the problem. So what we've done, it was actually relevant. For a year now, we've been trying to get a hospital to pick it up as a pilot project. And yesterday, I think we got a yes. So that's about 4 years for the system to accept a way to visualize something online. So I just think it's slow, but of course the potential of something like that could be big. If you manage to connect it to quality systems, and of course the hospital directors will love it when they can connect it to performance systems. And when you connect it to patient journals, of course, all those things. But that's might be there when I'm old. But to your question, I really have no idea.
I think you have to stop. This is very interesting discussions, but I think you have to stop because it's